biggest headlines you read are, well, merely the tip of a much larger, more complex iceberg. Today, we're plunging into a story where the pursuit of hidden truths, the unveiling of high-profile names, and the intricate dance of legal procedure collide in ways that have truly gripped the nation. It's a narrative demanding answers, sparking debate, and ultimately, shaping our understanding of power and accountability.
Indeed, this isn't just another news cycle. It's really a profound illustration of the public's relentless thirst for information, especially when it touches upon figures of power and influence. It also lays bare the intricate complexities of legal disclosures, particularly when sensitive information and, well, the rights of vulnerable individuals are involved. The perpetual challenge lies in balancing that imperative for government transparency with the critical need for protection.
Welcome to the Daily Scope, the show that meticulously sifts through your sources to give you a genuine shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're tackling a topic that is as sensitive as it is widely discussed. The latest developments surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein files and the recent highly scrutinized decisions from the Justice Department. This is a story with profound legal, political, and social implications, and our mission today is, well, to help you navigate its many layers.
Yeah, we've meticulously gathered a comprehensive range of reports, official statements, and key documents to bring you a deeply insightful overview. Our aim is to help you cut through the noise, understand the nuances, and truly grasp what's at stake in this ongoing saga. We'll be drawing directly from these sources to illuminate the government's internal processes and the powerful ripple effects of its decisions on public perception.
Right. Our mission today is to thoroughly unpack the revelations, delve into the critical decisions made, and trace their far-reaching ripple effects, helping you connect the dots without getting lost in the sheer volume of information. We'll meticulously explore the key players involved, analyze the significant political controversy that has erupted, and discuss the ongoing legal battles that continue to unfold. So, let's begin to unpack this complex narrative. Let's start at what has to be the pivotal moment that truly set the stage for everything we're discussing today. Back in May, the Justice Department delivered a briefing to President Trump, informing him that his name appeared multiple times within the now infamous Jeffrey Epstein files. This wasn't merely a casual mention. It was a significant disclosure given the intense public scrutiny already surrounding these documents and, well, the individual at their center.
That's a critical starting point.
Yeah.
Senior administration officials have provided some crucial context around this disclosure. They explained that this was part of a broader routine White House briefing. These briefings are designed to cover a multitude of topics that the Justice Department deems relevant for the president's awareness, ranging from national security concerns to ongoing high-profile investigations. According to these officials, President Trump's appearance in the documents wasn't even the primary focus of that specific discussion.
Right.
This framing is important because it suggests that from the DOJ's perspective, the mentions were part of a larger, multifaceted landscape of information, rather than, say, a singular, urgent concern related specifically to the president.
So it wasn't a dedicated, focused meeting solely about his name being in the Epstein files. That's an important distinction. But beyond it being a routine briefing, what else did the Justice Department convey about the nature of these mentions? Were they specific accusations or something else entirely?
Well, the officials were quite clear in their description to the president. They conveyed that the files contained what they broadly characterized as unverified hearsay about a substantial number of individuals, including President Trump, who had socialized with Epstein at various points in the past.
Unverified hearsay?
Yeah, to understand unverified hearsay, imagine information that isn't direct testimony or firsthand evidence. It's more like rumor, indirect reports, or maybe secondhand accounts. Legally, such information often carries, little weight for criminal charges without independent corroboration.
Okay.
And one official who possessed direct familiarity with the documents went as far as to state that the files contained hundreds of other names.
Hundreds.
Hundreds. This detail is crucial because it underscores the sheer volume and breadth of individuals mentioned within this vast collection of material. It frames President Trump's mentions as part of a larger, interconnected social network, rather than isolated instances of alleged direct wrongdoing.
Unverified hearsay and hundreds of other names, that certainly paints a much broader and, well, more complex picture than some might initially assume, especially for those anticipating a definitive client list. It suggests this wasn't about a handful of targeted mentions, but rather a pattern across a very wide array of high-profile figures and others who, at some point, intersected with Epstein's orbit, however tangentially.
Precisely. It speaks volumes about the extensive nature of Epstein's social and professional network, or at least the sheer volume of individuals whose names surfaced in the materials gathered during the investigation,
Yeah.
irrespective of their direct relevance to a crime. The Justice Department's perspective, as communicated to the sitting president by Attorney General Pam Bondi and her deputy, was that these mentions were not necessarily direct accusations or conclusive evidence of criminal activity.
Right.
Instead, they were mentions within a voluminous collection of sometimes unsubstantiated information. This is key because it frames the mentions not as prosecutorial leads against those individuals, but as background noise within a broader investigation. This distinction between a name appearing in a file and a name being indicative of wrongdoing became a central point of contention in the public discourse later on.
This brings us directly to a truly critical decision made by the Justice Department. Given these revelations and the immense public interest, why did they ultimately opt not to release more Epstein documents? This was a choice with significant legal, ethical, and political ramifications, sparking immediate debate.
It was indeed a pivotal decision, the DOJ decision, and officials cited several primary legally grounded reasons for their stance. Firstly, and perhaps most compellingly, the material contained child pornography. The Justice Department has an unequivocal, legally mandated obligation to prevent the dissemination of such illegal content. Federal laws strictly prohibit the creation, distribution, and possession of child sexual abuse material, and releasing it would not only violate these laws but also cause further harm to victims. Secondly, there was a stated and legally imperative need to protect victims' personal information. Victim protection is paramount here. Much of this material, had it been presented in a public trial setting, would have been sealed by court order, precisely to safeguard the privacy and identities of vulnerable victims who had already endured immense trauma. Revealing their personal details through public document release could expose them to further harm, harassment, or re-traumatization, directly undermining justice for them.
So it wasn't simply a matter of protecting high-profile names, but rather about upholding foundational legal and ethical standards regarding deeply sensitive content and, crucially, the privacy and well-being of victims. This seems like a clear, difficult line to walk.
That is precisely the official rationale presented by the Justice Department, and it aligns with established legal precedent. Attorney General Pam Bondi explicitly informed President Trump at that May meeting that the decision not to release further documents was driven by this dual imperative: the presence of child pornography and the absolute necessity to protect the personal information of victims. Additionally, the DOJ expressed significant concern about disseminating what they considered unverified hearsay, as we discussed earlier. Releasing such uncorroborated information could unfairly implicate or damage the reputations of individuals without concrete evidence of wrongdoing, effectively turning a public document release into a platform for baseless accusations. Furthermore, it's a standard and long-standing practice for the FBI, for instance, not to disclose materials that aren't directly related to a charged offense. That's standard FBI policy.
Right. That makes sense from an investigative standpoint.
Exactly. This protocol is in place to prevent fishing expeditions or the release of irrelevant, potentially damaging, but unproven information. So this decision, while controversial, aligns with typical legal and investigative procedures.
Okay, so with those weighty reasons laid out, what was President Trump's immediate response during that May meeting when he was briefed on this decision by Attorney General Bondi? Did he push for more transparency and immediate release, or did he defer to the department's judgment?
According to senior administration officials who were privy to the meeting, President Trump stated at that May meeting that he would defer to the Justice Department's decision not to release any further files at that time, a clear Trump deferral. This indicated an acceptance of their rationale and a willingness to respect the department's legal and ethical boundaries. What's particularly fascinating, though, is that this significant decision, a presidential deferral on a matter of intense public interest, was not publicly announced immediately.
Oh, interesting.
It was only weeks later, specifically on July 7th, that the Justice Department posted an unsigned memo on its official website, finally stating its public position. This memo served as the administration's official public word on the matter.
The delay in publicly announcing such a high-stakes decision is certainly intriguing. It means the internal decision was made and accepted by the president well before the public was officially informed via that unsigned memo on the Justice Department's website. It leaves one wondering about the strategic timing of that disclosure. Thinking about this decision, for you, the listener, how do you balance the public's undeniable right to know with the paramount protection of victims and genuinely sensitive information? It's a complex, ethical tightrope, isn't it? We'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts on how you would navigate that tension. Feel free to drop your perspective in the comments below. Now, let's pivot to the considerable public and political controversy and fallout that erupted once this decision not to release more Epstein documents became public. This was far from a quiet affair. It sparked some truly intense and widespread reactions. What was the immediate impact, especially on President Trump's political base?
This decision triggered what many political analysts and insiders have described as the most serious backlash from President Trump's core political base since he first launched his bid for the White House nearly a decade ago. Many of his most ardent allies and dedicated supporters viewed this move as a massive betrayal of promises made during his campaign and presidency.
A betrayal. Why so strong?
Well, the reason for this particularly strong reaction stems from a long-standing narrative. Trump's advisors had, for months even throughout his presidential campaign, indicated that his administration would be committed to releasing these Epstein files. Furthermore, some of his most vocal supporters had actively promoted the idea that these documents would expose a cabal of global elites and powerful Democrats who allegedly spent time with the disgraced financier. When the files weren't released, it created a profound disconnect with those deeply ingrained expectations and narratives, leading to this feeling of being let down by a leader who had promised radical transparency against perceived establishment corruption. The Epstein files backlash was significant.
So it really felt like a fundamental broken promise to a significant portion of his base, especially those who had invested in the idea that this release would expose specific political figures or maybe a deeper conspiracy. And this wasn't just quiet grumbling online, was it? There were very visible, tangible signs of public outcry that couldn't be ignored.
Absolutely. The public outcry escalated beyond online chatter and became quite visually tangible. For instance, on July 18th, a striking message was projected onto the facade of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce building.
Right across from the White House.
Exactly. Stands directly across from the White House. This projection explicitly and unmistakably demanded that President Trump release the Epstein files. This wasn't a nuanced protest. It was a bold, physical, and highly visible display of public dissatisfaction right in the heart of Washington, D.C., impossible to miss. Furthermore, the pressure extended deep into Capitol Hill. House Speaker Mike Johnson reportedly found himself in a position where he had to cut short the legislative session.
Well,
Yes, because some lawmakers were actively and vociferously demanding votes on more releases related to the Epstein files. This particular detail speaks volumes about the escalating cross-factional political pressure building on the administration to disclose more information, indicating that the issue had become a serious impediment to regular legislative business.
wow, cutting short a legislative session, that truly underscores the intensity and political weight of this issue in Washington. It's not just a fringe concern then. With all this escalating public and congressional pressure, what has President Trump's private sentiment been regarding this persistent and growing controversy? Does he welcome the continued attention on these files, especially after the backlash?
Quite the opposite, in fact. People close to the administration have quietly indicated that President Trump has, in recent weeks, privately told administration officials that he simply wanted the growing public attention on Epstein to go away. This sentiment suggests that despite his earlier indications of support for releasing the files, perhaps in an effort to appeal to his base's transparency demands, the reality of the political backlash and the relentless scrutiny has made the entire affair a significant political burden. The ongoing controversy, it appears, has evolved into a persistent and unwelcome headache for the administration, detracting from other policy priorities and consuming valuable political capital.
It's abundantly clear that this issue has placed a lot of individuals in extremely difficult positions, both in their public roles and privately. Let's now delve into some of the key players who were directly involved in this review process and examine the significant internal conflict that has reportedly taken place within the administration. Attorney General Pam Bondi seems to be right at the center of this. What was her specific role, and what had she said previously that truly set the stage for this high-stakes review?
Pam Bondi, as the nation's chief law enforcement officer and head of the Justice Department, indeed played a central, highly visible role. Her involvement was foreshadowed back in February when she publicly stated that Epstein's client list was sitting on my desk right now to review. This statement immediately positioned her at the forefront of the administration's efforts to review these sensitive files and naturally raised public expectations about potential disclosures.
Right, setting expectations high.
Exactly. Fast forward to that crucial May meeting with President Trump. Both Bondi and her deputy, Todd Blanche, confirmed that after their extensive review, they concluded that nothing in the files warranted further investigation or prosecution of any additional individuals. They maintained that informing the president of these findings was part of a routine briefing, reinforcing the idea that this was a standard official procedure for the head of the Justice Department to apprise the commander-in-chief of findings from a significant ongoing matter.
So her initial public statement built up anticipation, and then her eventual findings, corroborated by Todd Blanche, led to the conclusion that no further public release or investigation was warranted. But were there differing opinions within the administration, particularly within the FBI leadership, about this conclusion or the decision to withhold the documents?
Yes, absolutely. There were significant internal tensions. FBI Director Kash Patel, who leads the nation's premier investigative agency, according to people close to the administration, privately informed other government officials that President Trump's name did appear in the files, confirming what the president was told. However, Patel also publicly stated that the Justice Department's memo on non-release was consistent with the thorough review conducted by the FBI and DOJ, indicating his alignment with the official decision.
Okay, so publicly aligned.
Publicly aligned, yes. But this is where it gets truly interesting, because it contrasts sharply with the stance of his deputy, Dan Bongino. Bongino reportedly favored releasing more documents, expressing concerns to his colleagues that his association with the decision to keep the files private had significantly eroded his credibility among his political base.
Ah, the credibility factor.
Exactly. As a prominent podcaster and media personality on the right, Bongino's public persona is built on advocating for transparency and exposing perceived corruption. So being tied to a decision to withhold information clearly presented a professional dilemma for him.
That's a fascinating layer to this whole affair. How these high-stakes decisions directly impact the personal credibility and public standing of figures like Bongino, who have built platforms on specific principles. And this internal conflict wasn't just a quiet difference of opinion, was it? We've heard reports of a rather heated exchange between Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino, escalating beyond mere professional disagreement.
It was far from a quiet debate. A particularly fiery meeting reportedly occurred on July 9th, just days after the Justice Department publicly released its unsigned memo on non-release. During this meeting, Bondi reportedly accused Bongino of secretly providing information to the media, suggesting he was attempting to damage her reputation or undermine the DOJ's decision.
Wow.
In response, according to a senior administration official present at the meeting, Bongino exploded. His face reportedly turned red, and he vehemently called her a liar. This highly charged confrontation highlights the deep divisions, the personal stakes, and the intense pressure cooker environment within the administration as these highly sensitive documents were being reviewed and managed. It wasn't merely about policy or procedure. It was about trust, political positioning, and perceived betrayal among high-ranking officials.
That truly sounds like an explosive moment behind closed doors, revealing the immense personal and professional pressures at play. Now, let's shift gears slightly and talk about some of the glaring contradictions that have emerged from various public statements, as well as the significant legal battles that this entire situation has ignited. President Trump himself has made some seemingly Trump contradictions regarding what he was told about his name appearing in the files.
He absolutely has, and these contradictions have certainly fueled public speculation. On July 15th, just days after the DOJ's public memo, an ABC News journalist directly asked President Trump, as he took questions at the White House, if Attorney General Bondi had indeed told him his name appeared in the Epstein files. President Trump responded quite unequivocally, no, she's given us just a very quick briefing. He then added that Bondi had really done a very good job on the Epstein review. This statement directly contradicts the accounts from senior administration officials we discussed earlier, who explicitly affirmed that Bondi and her deputy, Todd Blanche, informed the president in May that his name was, in fact, present in the files. This discrepancy, coming directly from the president, has undeniably raised eyebrows and led to questions about the administration's consistency in its messaging.
It certainly does raise questions, a direct contradiction from the sitting president himself regarding what he was briefed on. And speaking of media reporting and scrutiny, there was also a specific Wall Street Journal article that garnered a huge amount of attention, which then led to a significant Wall Street Journal lawsuit from President Trump. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. On July 18th, the Wall Street Journal published a prominent article detailing a letter bearing President Trump's name that was included in a 2003 birthday album, Assembles for Epstein. It's important to note that this birthday album was compiled well before Epstein was first charged with any crimes, placing the document firmly in the context of an earlier period of their association.
Okay, pre-charges.
Pre-charges. Days later, President Trump initiated significant legal action, suing the journal's reporters, its publisher Dow Jones, parent company News Corp, and several executives. He publicly branded the letter as non-existent and alleged defamation, arguing that the reporting damaged his reputation. Dow Jones, for his part, quickly issued a strong counterstatement, expressing full confidence in the rigor and accuracy of our reporting and vowing to vigorously defend against any lawsuit, setting the stage for a potentially protracted and high-profile legal battle over journalistic integrity. It's worth noting that it remains unclear if any of the pages from this specific 2003 birthday album were part of the Trump administration's recent review of the Epstein files, adding another layer of complexity.
So a defamation lawsuit targeting a major established media outlet over a specific document, that's a very strong pushback against journalistic reporting and a clear signal of the president's stance. And beyond these private legal disputes, there's been a public push led by the president himself for the release of grand jury testimony. What's the significance of that, and how likely is it to happen?
This is a particularly complex aspect of the legal landscape. On July 18th, President Trump publicly stated that he had directed Attorney General Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony, subject to court approval. Following this directive, on July 19th, Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche formally submitted a request to a federal court to do exactly that, framing it as a matter of public interest, given the intense public demand for information.
Okay, but is grand jury testimony the whole file?
No, not at all. It's crucial to clarify that grand jury testimony constitutes only a fraction of the total evidence gathered in the Epstein investigation. The FBI, as part of its comprehensive review, compiled more than 300 gigabytes of Epstein-related material, which includes a vast array of digital and documentary evidence confiscated from Epstein's properties in the U.S. Virgin Islands and New York back in 2019.
300 gigabytes.
Wow. Yeah. Now, concerning the likelihood of this testimony being released, grand jury testimony is subject to incredibly stringent secrecy protections under federal law. These are fundamental legal hurdles. They encourage witnesses to testify freely without fear, protect ongoing investigations, and prevent prejudicing potential jurors. As such, releasing grand jury testimony faces exceptionally high legal hurdles. It's not a simple matter of executive directive. It requires a federal court to weigh very specific, narrow exceptions to these long-standing secrecy rules, like a compelling public interest that outweighs the systemic need for secrecy. Administration officials, recognizing these formidable legal constraints, have privately acknowledged that the court is unlikely to release this testimony.
So probably not happening.
It seems highly improbable, given these deeply entrenched legal precedents and the judiciary's commitment to protecting the grand jury process. So while the requests have been made, the practical reality is it's unlikely.
That's a really important distinction. It highlights the complex interplay between public demand for transparency and the strict legal frameworks that govern such sensitive information designed to protect the integrity of the justice system itself. It shows that even with a presidential directive, there are deeply embedded legal firewalls that aren't easily breached. Let's briefly revisit the nature of President Trump's past connections to Jeffrey Epstein. This is a question that frequently resurfaces in public discussions about the files, and it's important to understand the historical context of their connection. What do we know about their association over the years, the Trump-Epstein friendship?
Well, both Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump have publicly stated years ago that they had a falling out. President Trump specifically has consistently maintained that his friendship with Epstein concluded well before the financier was first indicted for soliciting prostitution in Florida back in 2006. That's the key Epstein history timeline point.
Yeah.
Following that indictment, Epstein subsequently pleaded guilty in 2008 to procuring a minor for prostitution, served time in a Florida jail, and was officially registered as a sex offender.
Right.
When Epstein was arrested again in 2019 on new federal sex trafficking charges, President Trump reiterated that he hadn't talked to Epstein for approximately 15 years, reinforcing the narrative of a long-ended association. As we know, Epstein died in jail that same year while awaiting trial on those federal charges. The historical timeline, therefore, suggests that their association predates the more widely publicized and serious allegations of sex trafficking that emerged later, though the extent and nature of their earlier interactions continue to be a subject of public fascination and scrutiny.
So, the narrative from both sides has been that their association ended well before Epstein's more serious criminal activities became widely known. This context is crucial for understanding the historical timeline of their connection relative to the progression of Epstein's legal troubles. Now, let's turn our attention to another key figure deeply entwined with Epstein's criminal enterprise, Ghislaine Maxwell. Her role is central to the broader Epstein saga, and there have been significant ongoing developments concerning her.
Ghislaine Maxwell's involvement is indeed foundational to understanding the full scope of Epstein's crimes, particularly the sex trafficking. As many listeners will recall, she was found guilty in 2021 of helping Epstein's extensive operation and was subsequently sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. She's been in custody since she was charged in 2020 and notably chose not to testify at her own trial. However, the story doesn't end with her conviction. More recently, there have been some very significant developments regarding her continued relevance to the broader investigation. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated publicly on Xn that the Justice Department was actively seeking to arrange a Justice Department meeting with Maxwell in the coming days. A meeting now? Yes. The stated purpose of this high-level meeting is to discuss any possible information about anyone who has committed crimes with Epstein. This indicates a clear and ongoing effort by the Justice Department to fully understand and potentially prosecute the wider network of individuals who may have been complicit in Epstein's crimes, still focused on uncovering the truth.
So even with Maxwell convicted and serving a lengthy sentence, the Justice Department is still actively pursuing information through her, which suggests they believe there's more to uncover. What has Maxwell's legal team said about these ongoing discussions, and what's her current legal status regarding her conviction itself? Is she pursuing a legal appeal?
Maxwell's lawyer, David Oscar Marcus, has confirmed that these discussions with the Justice Department are indeed taking place. And importantly, he expressed gratitude to President Trump for his commitment to uncovering the truth in this complex case. This specific comment from Maxwell's legal team is notable, given the broader political context and the public's thirst for more information from the Epstein files. It suggests a potential alignment of interests, where Maxwell, despite her conviction, might hold keys to further revelations that could be beneficial to the Justice Department's continued investigations or perhaps even to her own appeals process.
Interesting dynamic.
And separately, yes, this is a crucial point, Maxwell is currently engaged in a legal effort to have her conviction overturned. Her legal team contends that she did not receive a fair trial, citing various grounds for appeal. So, while these discussions with the Justice Department are ongoing and could potentially yield new information about others involved with Epstein, she is simultaneously pursuing all available avenues to challenge her current sentencing and conviction. This highlights that despite her being behind bars, the legal proceedings surrounding her, and thus the potential for new information connected to the wider network of Epstein's crimes, are far from over. It keeps the door open for further developments.
We've just completed an incredibly detailed and intricate deep dive into the Jeffrey Epstein files, the complex decisions made by the Justice Department, and the profound political reverberations that have echoed through Washington and across the nation. It truly serves as a stark reminder of how intertwined legal processes, public perception, and high-level politics can become, creating a complex, evolving narrative that continues to demand our attention and scrutiny.
This entire situation raises a truly fascinating and enduring question about the delicate balance. How much information the public should have access to versus what the government deems necessary to protect, particularly when dealing with such profoundly sensitive issues like child pornography and the privacy of victims. It's clear that while some answers have certainly been provided regarding the Justice Department's review and decisions, the broader conversation around government transparency, accountability, and justice for all those involved with Epstein's illicit activities remains a prominent and pressing concern. The tension between those two imperatives, public disclosure and legal protection, is really a defining feature of this saga.
What stands out to you most from today's in-depth discussion? Do you believe the Justice Department's decision to withhold more documents was justified, given the compelling reasons cited about child pornography and victim protection? Or do you think the public's right to know should have taken precedence, even in the face of those difficult considerations? We truly value your perspective on these incredibly complex issues, so please let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive valuable, and we sincerely hope you did, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the Daily Scope for more in-depth analyses like this one, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. We are absolutely committed to bringing you the clarity and context you need to stay well informed on the most pressing issues of our time.